The foundation of Russia began in 882 with the establishment of the Kievan Rus, a federation of Slavic tribes centered in modern-day Ukraine. More than 1100 years later, Russia and its close neighbors have evolved, transformed, and changed dramatically. Currently, another transformation is occurring in Russia, and some see it as an autocratic shift, while others see it as a nationalistic movement. What lies ahead for the largest physical nation in the world? Let's explore and see. The history of Russia is a rich tapestry that dates back to the East Slavs in the 9th century, with the establishment of the Kievan Rus, a federation of Slavic tribes under a single ruler. Over the centuries, Russia evolved into a powerful empire, with the Mongol invasion in the 13th century shaping its development and isolating it from Western Europe. The rise of the Grand Duchy of Moscow in the late 15th century marked the beginning of the centralization of power, leading to the formation of the Tsardom of Russia. The Romanov dynasty, which began in 1613, expanded the empire across Siberia to the Pacific Ocean, establishing Russia as a global power. From then until the late 19th century, Russia gained control of many places within Europe and Asia, including much of Ukraine, part of the Poland-Lithuanian Commonwealth during the partition in the late 18th century, Finland in 1809, much of the Caucasus, and Central Asian nations east of the Caspian Sea. The 20th century saw the fall of the Romanovs during the Russian Revolution in 1917, leading to the establishment of the Soviet Union, a socialist state that played a pivotal role in global politics until its dissolution in 1991. Since then, Russia has undergone significant political and economic transformations, with President Vladimir Putin's leadership steering the country towards a more assertive and often controversial role on the world stage. In 2025, Russia is still seen as a major power, as it's a permanent member of the UN Security Council and a possessor of the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons. However, Russia has seen a dramatic shift towards becoming an autocracy, especially in the last decade. The future of the nation is questionable, as there are many factors, including economic, social, and geopolitical ones, that can easily change the trajectory. To try to predict Russia's future, we must look at the past 100 years. In 1922, the Soviet Union was established following the Russian Revolution, and Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution, became its first leader. Lenin died in 1924, and Joseph Stalin consolidated power and became the nation's next and most prominent leader. The Soviet Union played a pivotal role in World War II as an allied power, helping to defeat Nazi Germany. After the war, however, things changed, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the three Baltic states, were fully annexed by the Soviet Union, along with Eastern Poland and the northern part of East Prussia, which became an enclave where present-day Kaliningrad is. Besides full annexation, the eastern part of Germany, being occupied by the Soviets, came under control of the communist government, establishing the German Democratic Republic in the late 1940s. This set up the Iron Curtain, a political alignment that not only separated East Germany from West Germany, but established communist governments in Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. Although these nations were in theory independent, they weren't, as they were merely satellite states to the Soviet Union. Internally, the Soviet regime was marked by totalitarian control, political repression, and economic central planning. The Soviet Union expanded its influence in Eastern Europe and beyond. But by the 1980s, economic stagnation and political unrest began to unravel the state. In 1991, following reforms initiated by Mikhail Gorbachev and the rising nationalist movements, the Soviet Union dissolved, ending nearly 70 years of existence. Russia, along with 14 other absorbed states, gained their independence, along with 6 satellite states in Central Europe. Boris Yeltsin became the president of Russia in 1991, and won re-election in 1996. Although Russia and these nations were on track to become democracies, it wasn't all good at first. In the 1990s, Russia's economy experienced economic dysfunction, leading to lower GDPs, per capita incomes, and human development indexes. Yeltsin resigned on December 31, 1999, and Vladimir Putin became the acting president. And in May of 2000, he became the official president. During the 2000s, Putin's administration pushed extraction of fossil fuels and minerals. Due to an increase in the price of commodities, Russia's economy started to recover dramatically, and the standard of living improved. In 2004, Putin won re-election, and then in 2008, Dmitry Medvedev, a close political ally to Putin, became president, while Putin became the prime minister. Then 4 years later in 2012, Putin won the presidency again, while Medvedev became the prime minister. But increasingly, Putin was seen as becoming more and more autocratic, with Russians in the global community believing that the more recent presidential elections were rife with fraud. During the mid-2010s, Russia began asserting its influence on its western neighbor, Ukraine, which was quite geopolitically unstable internally. It seized the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine in 2014, alleging that culturally and historically it was connected to Russia. Then 8 years later, in February of 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion into Ukraine. Russia has said it's justified due to factors such as the protection of Russian speakers and ethnic Russians, especially in eastern Ukraine, and the threat of NATO expanding towards Russia. Worldwide, the invasion was condemned by many Western nations. Currently, Putin is still the president and supposedly won the 2024 election with 88% of the vote, sparking widespread speculation. There are many theories that can be examined to see what Russia might look like in the future. One of those are internal and external geopolitical factors. Internally, Russia has gotten more and more autocratic. As of the 2023 Democracy Index list, it ranks low, classified as authoritarian, and over the last decade, it has seen intense democratic backsliding. With that, there have been many protests against the Kremlin, accusing it of being dictatorial and hard-handed. But many of these protests were suppressed by the government. Yet, there are still many Russians who support Vladimir Putin, and his approval ratings have often been high, even amid political controversies. He gets support for his handling of the economy and promotion of nationalism, especially his emphasis on restoring Russia's influence on the global stage. This also sets up another hypothetical scenario: domestic civil unrest. Considering that there are people who are supportive of the current Russian government and ones who aren't, can trigger a possible future civil war, creating many internalized socioeconomic problems. Another physical problem that can further lead to internal tensions is Russia's size. Russia still is the largest physical nation in the world. In the eastern areas, indigenous groups like the Buryats, Evenks, and Saka people live there, in sparse, isolated communities. Culturally, they're different than ethnic Russians in linguistics, genetics, and religion. These differences also may spark secession movements in these areas, creating more dysfunction. However, this likelihood has a low probability of happening, considering that eastern regions are far more dependent on Western Russia for economic dependence, foreign trade, and infrastructural improvements. Another externalized issue is the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. The invasion, ordered by Russian President Vladimir Putin, aimed to bring Ukraine under Russian influence. But the war hasn't gone as planned for Russia, as Ukraine has held its own to defend its homeland. Thousands of Russian troops have died, and there have been problems associated with logistical challenges, equipment losses, and low morale among some of its troops. This also has spilled over to some of the Russian population not supporting the invasion and either protesting against it or leaving Russia. But overall, the situation is far from over, as Russia may still be able to acquire territory from Ukraine. This leads to future concerns that Russia may not stop at Ukraine and advance to invade other European nations, including Moldova, Poland, the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and bordering Finland. All except Moldova are NATO nations. So, if this grim hypothetical situation were to occur, it may possibly spark World War III. Of course, one issue Russia does have is monetary issues, with how much it has already spent on the Ukrainian invasion, with estimates being in the hundreds of billions of dollars. However, another curveball that may help Russia fund its military is coalitions, especially with Iran and China, two close allies. If this happens to a greater extent, this can spark a world war on multiple fronts. Still, a nation such as China may not want to get involved in supporting Russia, considering that it's a large trading partner with the United States and other Western nations. An internal demographical shift that will occur in Russia is population loss. As of 2024, Russia has a total population of 140,820,810 people, but its internal birth rate is 8.4 births per 1,000 people, and its internal death rate is 14 deaths per 1,000 people, the 9th highest in the world. Also, its net migration rate is 0.8 migrants per 1,000 people, very low. These statistics amount to a 2024 population loss of 0.49%. Russia's peak population was when it was still the Soviet Union in 1991, when the nation topped out at nearly 149 million people. After the Ukraine invasion, the demographical situation got even worse due to military fatalities and a brain drain. Educated people who seek better employment opportunities in wealthier nations. In addition, other Russians have left the nation due to the Western sanctions put on the nation due to the Ukrainian invasion. Current projections show that by 2050, Russia's population will be 130 million and in 50 years drop to 120 million. Russia will continue to change through the 21st century, but what sort of change that may be is questionable. Some believe that Vladimir Putin has a grandiose vision of bringing Russia back to its former imperial glory. But it's 2025, not 1825 anymore. So, the prospects of Russia controlling all of Central Asia and Central and Eastern Europe are exceedingly low, especially for NATO nations who are all stable democracies. The furthest Russia might get in imperialism is gaining control of some of Ukraine, but that battle is an uphill one. Also, Belarus, an authoritarian post-Soviet absorbed state, has a government who is pro-Russian. Perhaps Russia may annex Belarus due to their political similarities. A positive trajectory Russia can take is to try to become a stable democracy, just as many of the other European post-Soviet absorbed and satellite states have achieved. By becoming geopolitically stable, Russia would fare better in the future societally and economically. What do you think the future holds for Russia? I'd love to hear your opinion on the matter, so please leave your feedback in the comment section below. That concludes this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you enjoy learning about geography, both physical and human geography, you'll like the content on my channel. So be sure to subscribe to Our World, Our Planet, Our Home to view more of my episodes. Until next time!